Hey, what's up everybody? Rob Marzullo here, Ram Studio Comics. Welcome back. So today I'm going to be sharing a free lesson with you from my course on Learn the Basics for Improving Your Figure Drawings. It's actually a classroom type setting that I set up on Skillshare, also made it available on my Gumroad. And it's an ongoing thing where I add lessons and you're able to complete project files and stuff like that. So a little bit more interactive experience. So hopefully it'll be very beneficial for everyone. But I wanted to give you a free sample of this by showing you one of the lessons. So without further ado, let's get to it. Okay, so in this lesson, we're going to focus on changing the orientation from the head to the upper torso to the pelvis. And when you pay special attention to these areas and the way that they have subtle shifts in the direction that they face and the angle that they reside in, you'll tend to get more dynamic characters. One of the reasons that we struggle to make characters look dynamic is in the very beginning, we get in the habit of just drawing everything pointing in the same direction. And no matter how well you can draw something and how much rendering you put on top of it, if there's not a certain balance and flow to the underlying structure, and again, the gesture, like we talked about before, then no rendering work is going to save it. It just doesn't work that way. You can still probably make it look pretty or something like that or polished, but it's going to show that the pose is too static and too stiff. So this is another way to kind of combat that issue. So it's helpful to focus on just this midsection in the center area, and again, the orientation from the shoulders, the hips, and the tilt of the head. And once you start to get more comfortable with the range of movement that those have, then your poses will start to look a lot more accurate, and you'll start to think in a lot more dynamic ways to kind of construct those. And even though the focus of this particular sketch is just more on the midsection and the tilt from those three main masses, the head, torso, and pelvis, I still feel the need to draw on the arms and legs just to check the pose. So a lot of times if you construct just those main areas, that's fine, but then you also need to be able to look at it and see if it works, with the rest of the body in place. So if you notice, there's a good pinching of the abdomen from this angle. So if I was to illustrate that, you have one side that pinches in and one side that elongates. The head, shoulders are about the same angle, but the pelvis is quite a bit different. So that's really the purpose of that pose, is to kind of illustrate those main things in that pose. So now we'll try another one, and with this one, we're going to do a little bit different angling of the head to the torso, and you'll see that it's quite a bit more dynamic already. And a great thing to reference when doing these types of poses is dancing. So with that, you get a lot of the angling of the body that we're looking for, a lot of the different orientations from the shoulder to the hips to the head, the tilting of the neck, the pivoting that you see. So you can almost see that the neck itself has the same pinching relationship as we did on the hips or the midsection of the male. So her neck is actually elongated on the one side and shorter on the other based on the tilt of the head. So again, paying special attention to small details like this will help you to get these poses to look a little bit more accurate. And again, notice the way that the abdomen in the midsection connects the torso to the pelvis, and the way that the stomach muscles can actually tilt and kind of fan across. So that's another thing that I wanted to really pay attention to with this type of pose. And notice too how the leg coming out towards camera, that little bit of foreshortening does so much for the pose and adds another dynamic to it. And it's actually pretty easy to do. It does take practice to get good at foreshortening, and it's again one of those things we're always trying to improve upon. But I will be giving you some tips on how to better understand foreshortening or how to break it down. So you can see just like that, we've got a pretty decent pose in place, making some final tweaks and adjusting proportions. And then now we can kind of illustrate the angle and tilt from the head, the shoulders to the pelvis. And you can see they're all on very different orientations, and that again is why the pose doesn't look so boring. It gives it a bit more areas of interest to study and look at. Okay, so for this next one, we're just going to draw out another pose, but we're going to keep it just to the three main masses and very mannequin style. And the purpose of this one is I actually want to just show you the difference that you can create by changing one component of this type of pose. So we'll change the head to a different orientation from the first sketch, and then we'll compare those two. So this can be a great exercise for really studying through your work a little bit further. Try constructing a pose and just changing, the arms, the legs, the head orientation, anything, and you can see that you can kind of learn to work through maybe a bad pose or save a pose from having to totally redraw it. And you see that the head's on a little bit different tilt than the shoulders, not much. There is a slight difference there. And the shoulders are on a different tilt and also coming out away from the body differently than one another. So there's not a symmetrical thing going on there. It's very asymmetrical, and that's the other thing that you want for a dynamic feel to your poses. As much asymmetry as you can get. So again, we got that pinching on the one side and the elongated stretch to the other side. And then there's our orientations. Now what I want to show you is if we were to take this and change just one mass, in this case the head, how much different of a pose that we can get. And again, this is another exercise that I really recommend. So creating a pose and just changing the arms or just changing the limbs or even one thing and seeing how much variety you can get to it. So if you notice there, just by changing the tilt of that head and the orientation, it's got a lot more dynamic or impressive feel than that first one. And again, this is based on whatever storytelling you're trying to do. So obviously it's got to match the narrative, but to me it has a better dynamic feel than that first pose we created. And that'll complete this lesson. Let's move on to the next.